Hey guys, tonight we descend, quite literally, into one of the darkest, smelliest corners of medieval life. Imagine it now. You're standing in a shadowy courtyard under the cold glare of the moon, holding tightly onto a rickety wooden ladder. A castle looms silently above, its stone walls wrapped in ivy, looking like the perfect postcard, until you remember you're heading down the privy hole. That's right, you're tonight's lucky Gong farmer, medieval Europe's very own sanitation specialist. Honestly, you probably won't survive this. At least your dignity won't. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You grip the ladder tighter, peer into the inky darkness, and take a cautious breath. Not too deep though. Below awaits the pungent mystery of the castle's latrine shaft, where noble secrets disappear, sometimes literally. A quick prayer to whatever patron saint oversees unfortunate career choices, and you begin your slow descent. Your feet find each rung carefully, the wooden steps slick and warped from the dampness of years past. Torchlight flickers weakly from above, casting dancing shadows that play cruel tricks on your eyes. A thought crosses your mind. You'd better not look down, but your job tonight demands precisely that. The further you lower yourself, the more the air thickens, dense with odors best left undescribed. Yet, despite the overpowering stench, your medieval counterparts called this an honest job, a vital one, and while no noble would shake your hand, they'd certainly suffer without you. After all, somebody has to clear out these stone-carved latrines, these shafts often plunging down 3 stories into dark, slime-covered pits. The medieval Gong farmer, your new role tonight, was crucial, if deeply unpleasant. As you inch downward, your fingers brush against slimy moss and something furry. Best not dwell on that. Your mind drifts slightly, perhaps a self-defense mechanism, as you ponder how folks got themselves into such a messy profession. Usually, Gong farmers were poor, often outcasts, willing to trade their sense of smell and social standing for stable pay and a guaranteed meal at day's end. Historians still debate whether Gong farmers truly had better working conditions than other medieval laborers. Sure, blacksmiths risked burns, and soldiers risked swords, but could either compete with literally wading in human waste? Your clothing, heavy boots, long leather gloves, and an oiled canvas coat, does little more than keep you from becoming a walking human sponge. Still, you take quiet pride in knowing your nightly sacrifice helps prevent disease and chaos in a world where sanitation is just a whisper of what modern people expect. A faint splash echoes from below, pulling you back from your thoughts. Right, almost there. Your feet hit something solid. Finally, squinting through the gloom, you see the murky outline of tonight's cesspit, filled with horrors unseen and unmentionable. You briefly regret the hearty stew you ate earlier. One hand keeps a firm grip on the ladder as you slowly lower the other into the thick, almost pudding-like sludge. Scooping gently, your fingers close around, well, something probably best not to speculate too much. Legend says Gong farmers sometimes discovered odd treasures lost by careless nobles, jewelry, coins, even entire silver spoons. And occasionally, they pocketed these small prizes, risking severe punishment. Yet you wonder, could a lost silver necklace really justify this smell? Probably not. But in medieval times, every scrap mattered. Your muscles strain under the constant lifting and scooping, bucket after bucket pulled upward by ropes and pulleys to helpers above, each vessel carrying away your smelly cargo. You work quietly, methodically, your rhythm punctuated only by distant snores of noblemen who dream unaware of the gritty world beneath their privileged feet. Every now and then, you pause for air. Not that the air down here is much help. Flickering torches from above provide just enough illumination to reveal shadowy shapes you prefer not to examine closely. Rats, frogs, maybe even worse. Each creature adding a symphony of squeaks, croaks, and unsettling skitters, as though critiquing your form. A sudden noise, a soft, wet plop, makes you glance sharply upward. False alarm, just another careless chambermaid tossing a midnight pot's contents down without checking. Nice aim, lady. Still, you know it's part of the job, dodging unexpected deposits from above like a smelly version of medieval dodgeball. Just be glad she didn't aim better. Despite all the horror, or perhaps because of it, there's a strange peace in your work. No gossip down here, no politics, no knights jousting over wounded pride. Just you, alone with your buckets and thoughts, becoming perhaps the unlikeliest philosopher medieval Europe could offer. Finally, hours later, you finish scraping, hauling, and scooping, with your back aching and your nose pleading for mercy. You step onto the ladder, climbing slowly back toward fresh air. Relatively speaking, your helpers above hoist the last bucket, sighing in relief that tonight's dirty task is nearly over. You reach the courtyard, gasping gratefully at the cleaner night air, still scented faintly with smoke and distant cooking fires. Far better than what lies below. But don't relax just yet. Your night has only begun. Medieval sanitation waits for no one. As you wipe your brow with a less than clean sleeve, you look around at the silent castle, the moon illuminating its stone towers beautifully. Ironic, really, considering the grim business you handle beneath its grandeur. Yes, you're essential, hidden away, invisible yet utterly critical. Just another medieval Gong farmer, working deep below the splendid castles and cobbled streets, cleaning the hidden filth that no one else dares touch, ready for another night of grimy, necessary, yet oddly satisfying labor. Good, because tonight has plenty more adventures lurking in the dark. You emerge from the pit, thankful for the marginally fresher air, and immediately you're reminded that your duties don't end once you're above ground. Oh no, my friend. Your nightly adventures as a Gong farmer are only just beginning. The castle courtyard is eerily quiet, illuminated softly by a crescent moon and a few flickering torches. Shadows stretch across the cobblestones, disguising the unmentionable substances that inevitably drip from your buckets. The silence, at least, is comforting, broken only by occasional distant snores from nobles blissfully ignorant of your nocturnal labor. You quickly discover why gong farming was strictly a nighttime job. Imagine a lord or lady glimpsing the grim procession of chamber pots being emptied, or worse, catching a whiff of what you've been hauling through the castle halls. No one wants to witness their delicate sensibilities shattered by the grimy truth of sanitation. So, under cover of darkness, you and your small team begin your rounds, gathering chamber pots discreetly left by servants in shadowy alcoves and hidden corridors. As you walk carefully, balancing buckets with a practiced ease, you contemplate how different your life is from the nobles, sleeping soundly behind thick stone walls. They dream in soft feather beds, draped in luxurious fabrics imported from distant lands. You dream of getting through a shift without spilling sewage onto your boots. Honestly, priorities are different in your line of work. Historically speaking, medieval chamber pots weren't just simple buckets. Wealthy households crafted theirs from glazed pottery, sometimes even pewter or bronze, for the exceptionally fancy and brave souls. Each pot was carefully placed near the bedside, occasionally even decorated with the family crest. You can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of branding one's toilet. Perhaps the earliest example of questionable advertising. Carrying these ornamental receptacles back and forth nightly, you're occasionally tempted to judge the household's well-being based solely on their pot's contents. A rich dinner of venison or heavy ale could mean extra trips. On the other hand, a noble enduring a lean season might spare you a journey or two. Oddly enough, you're becoming somewhat of an unwilling expert on dietary habits, which wasn't exactly mentioned during the job interview, if there had ever been one. On particularly busy nights, you must take extra care not to splash your unsavory cargo onto sleeping dogs or stray cats. Nothing disrupts the quiet majesty of medieval midnight, quite like a startled animal, drenched and outraged, running howling through the halls. And trust me, you do not want to explain that to the steward. You pass silently through the darkened corridors, your path dimly lit by torch flames that dance and sputter on ancient walls. The castle's tapestries, woven with images of brave knights and legendary battles, watch your grim procession quietly. You sometimes wonder if the embroidered heroes envy your peace, free from their eternal, stitch-bound duels. Probably not, but still, one can dream. This nocturnal hauling wasn't only unpleasant, it was risky. Medieval buildings were infamous for their narrow stairs, uneven flagstones, and hallways cluttered with armor, stands, and heavy oak furniture. One careless step could send you sprawling, your fragrant cargo sloshing across the stone floors. If that happened, you'd swiftly learn medieval swear words could rival the best modern profanity, though you'd likely have to whisper them, considering the sleeping royalty nearby. Historians still argue whether gong farmers were truly marginalized or quietly respected. After all, someone brave enough or desperate enough to do this job clearly deserved a nod of acknowledgement. The nobility, however, generally chose polite ignorance, preferring to believe their waste simply vanished magically overnight. You can't really blame them. If magic did exist, you'd gladly trade your shovel for a wizard's wand. Occasionally, a curious servant, awake late from some chore, gives you a respectful nod as you pass. Their eyes betray a quiet gratitude, knowing full well the alternative, sewage overflowing through halls and chambers, would have dire consequences. It's these tiny gestures that keep your spirit alive, helping you feel slightly less like an outcast and more like the vital, if unseen, part of medieval life you truly are. Tonight, you notice the pots seem fuller than usual. Perhaps there was a feast, or maybe the Lord invited extra guests. Your arms burn from the weight. Your feet ache from the endless steps. And yet, oddly, there's a quiet satisfaction in the steady rhythm of your work. Medieval life thrived precisely because hidden people like you kept the cogs turning. Messy, stinking cogs, true, but essential ones nonetheless. Finally, you reach the castle gates, nodding quietly to the sleepy guard, who waves you through without question. Outside the castle walls, you traverse winding streets towards the city's edge. Lantern in hand, you and your companions weave through the dark, dodging piles of refuse and other hazards cleverly disguised by shadows. Street animals eye your buckets with suspicious curiosity, wisely keeping their distance. Even they know better than to mess with a Gong farmer's cargo. Eventually, you arrive at the city's communal cesspit, an open trench safely away from inhabited areas. This massive pit serves as the collective toilet for an entire population, a grim but effective solution to medieval waste management. The smell is overwhelming, even to your practiced nose, but you dutifully pour your buckets into the pit, adding tonight's contributions to history's most unfortunate stew. As you pause to wipe sweat from your brow, you briefly consider how future historians might look back on your thankless job. Would they marvel at your bravery, pity your situation, or just wrinkle their noses in scholarly disgust? Whichever the case, tonight you simply relish the satisfaction of knowing your work is done, at least for now. Returning to the castle for another load, the first hints of dawn begin to paint the horizon. Your shift, thankfully, draws slowly to a close, but not before countless more buckets await your attention. And so, you brace yourself, silently preparing to repeat the whole fragrant ordeal once more. But hey, look at the bright side. There's always the hope you'll find something interesting in tomorrow night's chamber pots. After all, medieval life is nothing if not unpredictable, especially when you're a Gong farmer. As dawn inches nearer, you make your way once again through the winding alleys of the medieval city, buckets in hand, filled to a precarious brim. Cobblestones, slick with morning dew, make each step a delicate dance. You quickly realize medieval streets aren't exactly optimized for someone hauling sewage buckets, a significant oversight by the city planners. Surely, but here you are, perfecting your balance like a medieval gymnast, just significantly smellier. The city slowly stirs awake around you, early risers yawning as they shuffle towards their chores, completely unaware, or at least pretending to be, of your quiet, messy contribution to their health and comfort. A baker waves sleepily, his nose wrinkling at your approach, yet grateful nonetheless that last night's stew has somewhere better to go than the street outside his door. No thanks necessary, friend. Really, it's a curious irony how the medieval city, bustling and vibrant by daylight, rests entirely upon the quiet toil of night workers like you. Historians often remark on grand medieval markets, magnificent cathedrals, and knights jousting in tournaments, but few consider that without your nightly contributions, the streets would quickly turn into open cesspools. So next time someone boasts about medieval innovations, remind them it took a Gong farmer to keep those shiny armor boots clean. You shuffle down another dark alley, your eyes now expertly adjusted to the gloom. The smell, strong enough to knock out the uninitiated, is now oddly comforting, or at least tolerable. Funny how quickly humans adapt. Just don't mention that part at dinner parties, unless you never want to be invited back. Now, medieval sanitation wasn't simply about throwing buckets into cesspits. Entire systems of gutters and rudimentary drains existed beneath the city streets. They weren't exactly sophisticated, more hopeful than functional, but they did help redirect the flow of humanity's less glamorous output. Unfortunately, they clogged frequently, creating mini floods of unpleasant proportions. Guess who got to clear those out? That's right, you're truly living the medieval dream. Tonight, you notice an overflowing drain near the blacksmith's shop. Water, and worse, trickles down into a growing puddle, threatening to engulf the street. You set your buckets down reluctantly and kneel beside the drain, leather gloves creaking ominously as you reach in to clear whatever debris blocks the flow. Your hand grasps something slimy, yet oddly hard. Pulling it out reveals a mud-covered pewter goblet, possibly thrown out after a particularly enthusiastic night of drinking. Waste not, want not, you suppose, tossing it into your bag. Medieval recycling at its finest. Strangely enough, these random discoveries are part of your peculiar reward system. Tiny treasures amongst the filth. Tales abound of Gong farmers uncovering everything from precious coins to lost jewels, discarded accidentally or intentionally by careless townsfolk. Sure, the work stinks, but the occasional medieval scavenger hunt keeps things interesting. The drain finally clear. Water and sludge resume their reluctant journey downward. You pick your buckets up again, now slightly lighter, but no less fragrant, and continue your rounds. The morning sunlight starts painting buildings in soft gold, beautifully masking the gritty reality beneath. Townspeople emerge, neatly dressed, passing you with polite nods or awkward glances. A medieval etiquette lesson in real time. Smile politely, but do not breathe deeply when the Gong farmer passes. Historically, medieval cities operated on a delicate balance between cleanliness and chaos. Epidemics were frequent, and public health was poorly understood. But everyone instinctively knew filth wasn't exactly beneficial. That's where you came in, performing essential duties to keep disease at bay. Though historians still argue how effective medieval sanitation truly was, at the very least, you provided some peace of mind, if not perfect hygiene. Suddenly, a voice from above startles you, a servant shouting urgently, "Look out below!" Instinctively, you dodge aside just as another chamber pot's contents splatter onto the cobblestones beside you. Close call, and you sigh with resignation. Medieval life, dodging sewage, since the Dark Ages, picking your way carefully past the fresh puddle. You head toward the outskirts, away from prying eyes. Here, beyond city walls, vast communal cesspits sprawl, safely distancing civilization from its refuse. On the way, you cross paths with fellow Gong farmers, each silently nodding in mutual understanding and respect, though admittedly, no one's pausing to shake hands as you empty buckets into the pit, watching the last traces of last night's banquet vanish into darkness. Your mind wanders to the curious irony of medieval nobility, rich lords and ladies, clothed in velvet and furs, yet utterly dependent on invisible workers like yourself, quietly removing the evidence of their very human habits. Would the nobles survive a day in your boots? Probably not, and certainly not without extensive fainting. Job done for the moment. You pause to stretch your aching muscles, breathing deeply despite the atmosphere's challenges. Birds chirp somewhere overhead, a comforting reminder that life above continues, oblivious to your labors below. Briefly, you wonder if birds ever question your career choices. Probably best not to ask. As you head back to town, buckets emptied, the city buzzes awake. Vendors shout greetings, carts rumble along streets, and children dart between buildings, carefree and oblivious. It's this contrast that fascinates you most. The vibrant medieval city above, and your grim but essential work below. People rarely thank you openly, but there's a quiet acknowledgement in their cautious nods, an understanding that you're vital, if not celebrated. Tonight's shift draws slowly to an end. Your body aches, clothes damp and pungent, yet oddly you feel satisfied. You've kept the medieval city running, quietly, efficiently, invisibly, and though history might overlook your contributions, you know precisely how important they are. Walking home, you pass merchants setting up stalls, oblivious to your night's adventures. As you reach your modest dwelling, the first rays of sunlight touch your face, warm and gentle, a stark contrast to the night's shadows. You smile wearily, closing your door softly behind you, ready for sleep. But you also know tomorrow night you'll repeat this strange dance, because medieval cities never truly sleep, and neither does their Gong farmer. As dusk descends once again, you prepare yourself for another grimy night's work. Tonight, you linger near your modest cottage, gathering your tools, tools that would never, ever appear on anyone's medieval wish list. Let's talk about your gear for a moment, shall we? First up, your trusty shovel, worn smooth from countless nights of scraping and scooping, its wooden handle polished by sweat and grit. The shovel's broad blade is speckled with rust, but it remains sturdy enough to move even the most stubborn medieval deposits. Historians might gush over shining swords and polished armor, but your shovel, oh, your shovel truly shaped history in ways nobody likes to admit. Next, there's your bucket, solid oak, bound with iron hoops. It's heavy enough even empty, heavier still when full, practically demanding you to master medieval bucket balancing as a secondary skill. You sometimes wonder if circus jugglers ever moonlighted as gong farmers. Frankly, it wouldn't surprise you. Then again, juggling flaming torches seems far safer than sloshing around buckets of medieval sewage. And let's not forget your gloves, thick leather, cracked and hardened by exposure to substances best left undescribed. No noble knight's gauntlets ever saw battle as fierce as your nightly encounters with medieval sludge. Truly, if bravery medals existed for sanitation workers, you'd be decked out like a medieval general. As you fasten your leather apron, the closest thing you have to armor, you reflect briefly on medieval hygiene practices. Folks in castles and towns genuinely believed foul odors caused illness. Their solution? Perfumes, flowers, and herbs everywhere, as if lavender could truly overcome your nightly cargo scent. Spoiler alert, it couldn't, but at least they tried. Tonight, your job takes you into the bowels of the cathedral precinct, a bustling place by day where monks chant solemnly and townsfolk gather to seek spiritual comfort. But as darkness settles, the sacred grounds reveal their less holy secrets. The latrines hidden discreetly behind ivy-covered walls. Your lantern flickers softly as you approach, shadows dancing across carved stone arches. A momentary thought crosses your mind. Shouldn't these monks have some divine assistance with sanitation? Apparently not. You sigh and lower your lantern, preparing your ropes and pulleys for descent. Medieval monks might meditate on higher things, but clearly not on plumbing. Your rope, strong hemp, braided expertly, is your lifeline. Every Gong farmer's greatest nightmare was slipping into the cesspit below, and your rope was the only thing keeping that nightmare distant. Historical records mention the occasional unfortunate Gong farmer losing his footing, plunging into the very pit he was cleaning. You shudder at the thought. Truly medieval horror. Carefully, you lower yourself into the pit beneath the latrine, your lantern held high, illuminating stone walls covered in something you'd rather not identify. A small army of curious rats scampers away, clearly annoyed by your intrusion. Sorry to disturb your medieval rat convention, you mutter dryly. Your humor has gotten decidedly darker since starting this career. As you scrape and shovel away the accumulated waste, your shovel strikes something metallic. Carefully, you lean down, pulling a small, tarnished ring from the sludge. A monk's ring, perhaps dropped accidentally or deliberately. Medieval latrines were often secret disposal spots for unwanted items, including evidence of scandal. Who knew you were also a detective tonight? Historians still debate whether Gong farmers regularly uncovered hidden secrets beneath medieval towns. Lost items, incriminating letters, even discarded manuscripts. Some scholars argue these finds were frequent. Others claim they're exaggerated, tales from bored Gong farmers seeking excitement amidst monotonous duties. You smile knowingly. Tonight's discovery certainly adds fuel to the debate. Climbing back out, you toss the ring into your leather pouch. Your small reward for a very messy night. The lantern's flicker casts strange patterns as you move onward to your next stop, the bustling town square's communal latrine. Public facilities were a medieval innovation intended to prevent sewage-filled streets, but unsurprisingly, they quickly became their own nightmares of sanitation. At the town square, you descend once more. This pit is larger, noisier, its hidden depths echoing with dripping water and scurrying vermin. Your lantern's glow reveals wooden beams reinforcing the shaft walls, medieval ingenuity at its smelly finest. You shovel steadily, pausing occasionally to stretch cramped muscles or swat away the boldest flies. While you work, you ponder how medieval townsfolk saw gong farmers. Outcasts? Sure, but also oddly heroic. Brave souls doing tasks everyone else avoided, while knights fought dragons in tales. You fought something arguably worse. Sadly, few minstrels composed ballads about sanitation workers, but they really should have. Suddenly, your shovel strikes wood, an old plank blocking drainage. Using all your strength, you pry it loose, and a sudden gush of stagnant water floods downward, draining the pit. You're splashed, of course, because medieval sanitation can't be neat, but at least the blockage is cleared. Another victory in your strange nightly battle. Emerging again into fresh air, you pause briefly, savoring the cleaner air despite the lingering smells. Across the square, a few townsfolk hurry home, casting cautious glances your way. You nod politely, and they hurry faster, eager to avoid conversation or catching any residual odors. Your rounds continue relentlessly through the night, shoveling, scooping, hauling. Medieval sanitation required stamina as much as bravery. Eventually, your muscles protest, begging for mercy, but you persevere. Because without you, medieval streets would descend into chaos, and secretly, you enjoy knowing your quiet role is essential. Finally, as the sky begins shifting from black to shades of gray-blue, you pause to rinse your equipment at a small stream outside town. Your nightly ritual, attempting to erase evidence of your job. Of course, no amount of rinsing removes every trace of your duties, but it's symbolic. A brief, hopeful effort to reclaim dignity. You head slowly home, tools clean-ish, body aching but satisfied. Another night, another victory for medieval hygiene, at least as much as medieval hygiene allowed. As dawn creeps gently across the sky, birdsong accompanies your final steps homeward. Your cottage door greets you, worn and welcoming. Inside awaits sleep, a brief respite, before tonight's inevitable return. As you drift off, you briefly ponder tomorrow's adventures. What secrets will you uncover? What blockages await your shovel? Whatever medieval sanitation throws at you, you'll handle it, after all. Somebody must. Though your nightly duties are solitary, there's a subtle comfort in knowing you're not alone in this unusual vocation. As dusk settles again, your preparations are briefly interrupted by a familiar, quiet knock at your door. Opening it reveals Edwin, another local Gong farmer, standing awkwardly in the doorway, holding his trusty shovel like a soldier holds his weapon. Edwin gives you a knowing nod. No words needed. Gong farmers, you've found, have an uncanny knack for silent communication, likely developed as a way to preserve oxygen. Together, you set off down the winding streets toward tonight's assignment, the city's merchant quarter. Working with another Gong farmer doesn't exactly double the joy, just the efficiency. But company helps pass the endless midnight hours. Historically speaking, Gong farmers often operated individually or in small unofficial groups. Medieval guilds existed for almost every trade imaginable: bakers, blacksmiths, even candle makers. But notably absent was any official guild for Gong farmers. It's easy to see why. Imagine the heraldic emblem, a shovel and bucket crossed over a cesspit. Hardly the stuff of medieval banners and noble tournaments. Yet, despite lacking an official guild, Gong farmers had a loose fraternity of sorts, a community bound not by formal charters, but by mutual respect, grim humor, and sheer necessity. Together, you and Edwin represent an essential, if ignored, chapter of medieval life. Invisible heroes of hygiene, cleaning cities one smelly bucket at a time. Tonight, Edwin seems particularly weary. He's an older Gong farmer, his beard flecked with gray, his eyes perpetually squinting from countless nights of low light and high stink. But he moves steadily, his strength honed from decades of carrying medieval history's foulest secrets. Quietly, you admire his resilience, hoping you'll match his endurance. The merchant quarter buzzes softly even at night, inns and taverns still lit dimly, voices murmuring behind thick wooden doors. Merchants, unlike nobles, kept later hours, haggling and trading well past sunset. Consequently, their cesspits were busier, filling faster, demanding your careful attention far more regularly. You and Edwin descend silently into the first pit, ropes creaking gently. As usual, rats scatter from your lantern's weak glow, clearly irritated by this recurring interruption of their nightly routines. You shovel methodically, rhythmically, while Edwin scoops beside you, the soft scrape of metal against stone oddly calming. Suddenly, Edwin grunts, pulling something strange from the muck. He holds it to the lantern's glow, a small, carved bone whistle, crusted in filth. Edwin chuckles dryly. Musician loses tune, he mutters, tossing the artifact into his satchel. Another mysterious relic retrieved from medieval obscurity. Such discoveries were common enough among Gong farmers. Little objects quietly discarded or lost down privy holes, revealing glimpses into everyday medieval lives. Historians still argue whether these finds were intentionally hidden or merely accidental losses. Gong farmers knew better. Medieval people had as many secrets as modern ones, just less effective plumbing. As you both haul the buckets upward, Edwin pauses briefly, leaning heavily against the pit's wall, catching his breath. Age catches everyone, even legendary Gong farmers. You offer silent support, giving him space without comment. Medieval Gong farmers respected each other's quiet dignity, knowing exactly how tough each night's work could be. Emerging above ground, you both breathe deeply of fresher air. Edwin glances toward the tavern door, where faint laughter escapes into the street. Ever wonder if they'd appreciate us more if they knew what we handled nightly? He whispers wryly. You shrug. Medieval gratitude rarely extended openly toward sanitation workers, yet their reliance was undeniable. Moving onward, you share quiet jokes to pass the time. Humor, dark, dry, mildly disgusting, was the Gong farmer's armor against despair. Edwin recounts old stories. The night he found an entire chicken, still alive, or the infamous cesspit explosion of 34. You laugh softly, your amusement masking mild horror. Yes, medieval sanitation had occasional explosive hazards. But that's a story for another night. Together, you clear several more pits, occasionally encountering other Gong farmers on their own rounds. Each nods silently, faces shadowed, but eyes bright with quiet camaraderie. This informal fraternity spanned the city, men and sometimes women, bound by shared burdens and mutual respect. Passing by a small chapel, Edwin briefly crosses himself, a quick, habitual gesture for protection. Medieval people were notoriously superstitious, and Gong farmers were no exception. Stories circulated of curses lurking beneath latrines, vengeful spirits of disgruntled townsfolk haunting cesspits. True or not, it was better safe than sorry, especially in your line of work. Eventually, dawn begins its gentle approach, and you and Edwin finish your final pit. Your backs ache, your arms tremble, your noses demand compensation for their nightly torment. Still, a sense of accomplishment lingers. You've both survived another night. Medieval sanitation, managed once more by quiet heroes, working beneath history's more glamorous tales. Returning home, Edwin waves tiredly, disappearing into his humble cottage. You pause outside your own, stretching stiff muscles, grateful for solitude, yet appreciative of shared toil. Historians might overlook Gong farmers, dismissing them as fringe figures on medieval society's margins. But tonight reminded you, your job, unpleasant as it might be, was vital, and your quiet community offered solidarity no noble could understand. Inside your cottage, you hang your tools carefully, your leather gloves nearly stiff enough to stand. Alone, soon you'll rest, letting daylight erase the memory of tonight's grime. But you also know tomorrow night you'll repeat the dance, shoveling, hauling, uncovering medieval secrets, quietly ensuring history remains hygienically possible. As sleep claims you, you briefly wonder what secrets Edwin has uncovered over his long career. What lost relics and whispered scandals lie hidden beneath medieval latrines. Maybe someday you'll ask. For now, rest is essential, because tonight's medieval sanitation waits patiently in shadows, eager for your return. Tonight, you face perhaps your most daunting assignment yet, unclogging the private latrine of Baron Godfrey himself, hidden deep within the labyrinthine bowels of his castle. You've cleared countless cesspits in your time, true, but this particular task carries its own unique blend of dread and curiosity. A nobleman's private latrine was not merely functional, it was a symbol of luxury, privilege, and often surprisingly medieval ingenuity gone wrong. Arriving quietly at the castle, your lantern casting jittery shadows upon the thick stone walls, you meet the steward, who gestures impatiently toward a dim corridor. Clearly, he has no desire to discuss the particulars of your task. Fair enough. Most people would rather pretend sanitation issues simply don't exist. Until they do, of course. Descending winding stairs, worn smooth by centuries of noble footsteps, you realize that tonight's journey is far more elaborate than usual. The deeper you go, the cooler the air becomes, tinged with moisture and mystery. Medieval castles, famously drafty and uncomfortable, were even less accommodating beneath their polished surface. At last, the steward pauses at a small wooden door, half hidden by shadow. Good luck, he mutters dryly, turning quickly to vanish back up the stairs. You sigh softly, adjusting your gloves with grim determination. Luck indeed. You'll need plenty of it tonight. Pushing the creaky door open, you hold your lantern high, stepping gingerly into a narrow, winding passage. It immediately becomes clear why the castle's latrine system frequently clogged. Medieval architects seemed determined to make sanitation as complicated as possible. Who designs a sewage shaft as convoluted as a dragon's digestive tract? Medieval architects, apparently. Your path twists sharply, forcing you to duck beneath low arches, dripping with suspicious moisture. Rats, your ever-present companions, scamper alongside, occasionally pausing as if guiding your way. You chuckle softly. Maybe they're leading you to treasure, or just eager for entertainment. Either way, you appreciate the company. Historically, medieval castle latrines were known as garderobes, small chambers built into castle walls. They often doubled as closets for clothes, the theory being foul odors would deter moths. You can't help but wonder, who decided that moth prevention warranted sharing space with human waste? Medieval pest control truly had questionable priorities. Tonight's issue, however, is deeper. A blockage somewhere within the elaborate stone channels designed to guide waste downward, away from the Baron's refined nose. Your lantern flickers weakly, illuminating stone walls slick with moisture. Kneeling carefully, you peer down a particularly narrow shaft, its opening barely wide enough for your shovel. You reach carefully, scraping and prodding, encountering resistance almost immediately. The blockage feels solid, stubborn, and oddly metallic. Curious, with patient determination, you maneuver your shovel, gradually loosening centuries, or at least months, of accumulated filth. Suddenly, something breaks free, clattering downward. The blockage cleared. Water trickles freely again. But you're left wondering what exactly fell into the darkness below. Your curiosity wins out, as always. Securing a rope, you carefully lower yourself down into the shaft. A risky move, certainly, but medieval Gong farmers weren't exactly risk-averse. Slowly descending, you hold your breath, though honestly, that does little good. The air grows denser, your lantern barely piercing the gloom. Finally, your boots meet something solid, a small ledge built into the shaft's side. Here, half hidden beneath muck and debris, lies the culprit, a finely crafted dagger, gleaming faintly in your lantern's glow. Oddly ornate, encrusted with jewels, now dulled by grime. How did such a valuable item end up discarded down a latrine? Medieval intrigue at its messiest. Historians still debate whether medieval latrines frequently served as secret disposal points for evidence of treachery or scandal. Finding weapons hidden beneath castle garderobes lends weight to such theories, though some argue these discoveries are coincidental, unfortunate accidents rather than deliberate concealment. Yet here, gripping this dagger, you sense deeper secrets hidden beneath the castle's polished exterior. Carefully pocketing the dagger, you begin climbing back upward, your thoughts swirling with possible explanations. Was this merely careless disposal, or a deliberate attempt to hide evidence of a noble quarrel? Medieval nobles often lived on the edge of scandal, their lives governed by subtle plots and whispered betrayals. Perhaps tonight, you've unknowingly stumbled onto one. Returning to the corridor, you retrace your steps carefully, emerging eventually back into the steward's impatient gaze. You nod, confirming the blockage. Cleared, wisely choosing not to mention your curious discovery. Gong farmers learned quickly. Discretion preserved both job security and physical safety. Heading out into the castle courtyard, you pause briefly beneath the open sky, breathing deeply of fresher air. Stars twinkle overhead, indifferent to your nightly dramas, and you chuckle softly. Medieval castles were majestic above ground, but beneath their surface, hidden dramas played out quietly, with you often the unintentional witness. You continue through the town, quieter now, still turning the dagger over thoughtfully in your pocket. You briefly consider the morality of keeping such a find. Gong farmers regularly encountered items discarded, lost, or hidden. Medieval ethics were rarely clear-cut, especially regarding abandoned treasure in latrines. For now, you decide it's safer tucked away quietly. Finally reaching your cottage, dawn faintly outlining the rooftops, you carefully clean the dagger, revealing intricate carvings along its hilt, symbols perhaps linked to powerful medieval families. You tuck it carefully away, your curiosity sparked, but questions unanswered. Perhaps someday, historians might trace this dagger's origins, adding another intriguing footnote to medieval history's complex tapestry. Tonight's adventure reminds you how deeply medieval society relied on sanitation workers, not merely to clean, but to quietly manage the secrets hidden beneath daily life. Gong farmers regularly uncovered evidence of medieval dramas, personal scandals, political intrigues, secret quarrels, all carefully concealed within latrine shafts and cesspits. As you settle into sleep, your thoughts still tangled with tonight's discoveries, you briefly wonder what tomorrow night might reveal. Medieval life offered endless mysteries, buried just beneath polished surfaces, and who better to uncover them than a humble Gong farmer, working quietly, unnoticed, beneath castles, streets, and history itself. Sleep claims you, finally, dreams swirling with daggers and secret tunnels, medieval mysteries waiting patiently for your next adventure. Tonight's duties begin routinely enough, clearing cesspits behind the marketplace. An unpleasant yet familiar task. But in your line of work, routine rarely stays routine for long. Beneath the ordinary sludge, medieval latrines have a habit of hiding surprises. And tonight, you're about to stumble onto an especially peculiar set of discoveries. The marketplace, vibrant by daylight, is now silent except for the occasional shuffle of rats and the distant hoot of an owl. Lantern in hand, you lower yourself into the first cesspit of the night. Almost immediately, your shovel scrapes something that jingles. A metallic sound, rare enough in your grimy world to warrant immediate curiosity. Carefully pulling aside thick, questionable muck, you reveal a cluster of silver coins, partially corroded but unmistakably valuable. Coins in latrines weren't unheard of. Medieval pockets, notoriously unreliable. frequently spilled their contents accidentally, but finding this many at once. Suspiciously generous pockets indeed. You place the coins carefully into your pouch, feeling oddly rewarded for your grim labor. But before you can celebrate, another scrape yields something softer, an embroidered silk glove, stained but once elegant. Curious indeed. Perhaps someone's romantic evening went horribly wrong. Medieval love stories often ended messily, though rarely quite so literally. Moving deeper into the pit, your shovel strikes yet another unexpected item. A small leather pouch, still tightly tied. You lift it carefully, opening the flap to reveal an assortment of rings and earrings, their precious gems glinting dimly. Now, your medieval sanitation task feels more like a treasure hunt than mere drudgery. Historians still argue whether Gong farmers truly uncovered significant valuables, or if such stories were exaggerated for entertainment. But tonight, you can confidently affirm medieval latrines definitely had their share of hidden wealth. Perhaps desperate thieves used the pit as a hiding spot, or an angry spouse discarded evidence of infidelity. Medieval drama, it seems, regularly ended up in your shovel's path. Suddenly, a frantic squeaking interrupts your musings, a rat scurrying urgently away from something unseen. Curious, you direct your lantern's flickering beam deeper into the pit's shadowy corners, revealing something unexpected. Eyes gleaming brightly back at you, too large for rats, too fierce for frogs. Medieval cesspits, you've learned, always held room for surprises, some delightful, some terrifying. Carefully approaching, you soon see what startled the rat, a massive nest of snakes, curled tightly together, clearly irritated by your intrusion. You recoil slightly, heart quickening. Medieval sanitation jobs rarely mentioned handling reptilian infestations. Yet, here you are, knee-deep in muck, facing down a slithering mass of irritated snakes. Because why not? Thankfully, your lantern's bright glow seems to keep them wary, coiled defensively rather than attacking outright. You slowly back away, deciding some mysteries were better left undisturbed. Besides, your pouch already bulged with medieval loot. No sense in pushing luck further. Quickly exiting that pit, you move onward to your next assignment, a private latrine behind the apothecary's shop. Apothecaries were medieval medicine's practitioners, skilled in remedies, both practical and dubious. You half expect strange ingredients beneath their latrine, perhaps herbs, powders, or something more bizarrely medicinal. Descending cautiously, your lantern reveals precisely that. Jars and bottles, mostly empty, but a few intact. You examine one curiously labeled Elixir of Youth, cork still sealed. Medieval apothecaries peddled countless questionable remedies, promising everything from eternal youth to magical luck. Clearly, one dissatisfied customer discarded their bottle, ironically down a latrine, hardly a youthful place. Gently placing the bottle aside, just in case, you uncover more oddities, fragments of parchment, perhaps discarded prescriptions or notes. Peering closely, you decipher words scrawled hastily: 3 drops mandrake, toad venom, cure plague. Medieval medicine was a curious blend of science and superstition. often indistinguishable in practice. Beneath the parchment lies something heavier, a small wooden box. Lifting it, you carefully pry open its damp, warped lid, revealing dozens of tiny glass vials, their contents murky. Probably best not to open these, considering their uncertain medieval contents. Yet, it sparks curiosity. Was this intentional disposal or accidental loss? Your nights often raise more questions than answers. Medieval sanitation workers frequently stumbled onto oddities, but tonight's finds are particularly intriguing. Carefully setting aside the box and bottles, you finish clearing the pit, your mind racing with speculative scenarios. Apothecary discarding failed experiments, or perhaps hiding something more sinister beneath his shop. Emerging above ground, your lantern reveals the first hints of dawn. Another night's work completed, your satchel heavy with strange medieval discoveries. You briefly wonder what future historians might think, finding evidence of mysterious remedies and hidden treasures discarded casually down latrines. Would they see it as evidence of medieval carelessness or intentional secrecy? Heading toward the communal cesspit to empty buckets, you pass sleepy townsfolk beginning their day, bakers setting bread out, farmers carting produce. They nod politely, unaware your satchel holds medieval mysteries, enough to spark scholarly debates. Gong farmers, after all, quietly witnessed history's stranger side, glimpses beneath polished medieval surfaces. Returning home, dawn now brightening streets. You carefully clean tonight's discoveries, examining each thoughtfully. The coins, glove, jewelry, tangible fragments of medieval lives, stories unfinished but fascinating. Even the mysterious apothecary items hold intrigue, testimony to medieval attempts at health, hope, perhaps desperation. Finally, exhaustion overcomes curiosity. You stow your finds safely away, satisfied that tonight offered more than merely buckets of waste. Medieval latrines, unpleasant yet essential, regularly surprised with hidden treasures, some sparkling, some sinister, all reminders of complex human stories. As sleep claims you, images dance through dreams. Glittering coins, angry snakes, mysterious potions, all woven together into tonight's medieval narrative. And though historians may argue endlessly, you know firsthand, medieval sanitation, grim as it might be, occasionally offered treasure hunts beneath the surface. Tomorrow night, no doubt, will bring more surprises. But for now, sleep gently eases you into dreams filled with medieval mysteries. Waiting patiently beneath cobblestone streets, you wake slowly as evening approaches, your muscles protesting mildly as you rise from bed, preparing once more to tackle medieval sanitation's nightly demands. Before heading out, you pause to consider tonight's essentials. A sturdy loaf of bread, a wedge of cheese slightly harder than your shovel, and a flask of questionable ale. Medieval lunch breaks were never gourmet experiences, especially for Gong farmers. Historically speaking, medieval meals for workers like you were practical rather than delicious. Food needed to sustain heavy labor and not spoil easily, a crucial requirement given your working environment. After all, nobody ever hosted feasts beside latrine shafts, and for good reason. Although, Perhaps medieval lords missed an opportunity for truly memorable dining experiences. Stepping into the cool twilight, lantern in hand, you head toward tonight's destination, the bustling inn district. Inns were critical hubs of medieval travel and trade, vibrant and noisy by day, lively and often disorderly by night. As you'd expect, their latrines were equally active, and tonight, inevitably, overflowing. Your stomach rumbles softly, a reminder it's nearly time for your midnight meal. But first, the job at hand. Arriving behind the first inn, you quickly spot the issue. A cesspit clearly neglected for days, its overflow threatening the nearby stable. Horses eye you suspiciously, their noses wrinkled with understandable distaste. Don't blame me, you whisper gently to a particularly skeptical mare. Lowering yourself down carefully, shovel in hand, you begin clearing the blockage methodically, pausing occasionally to swat persistent flies attracted by both your cargo and your lunch. Medieval meals were often informal affairs, quick bites between tasks, rarely leisurely or sanitary. Your own meal tonight would be no exception. With the first pit finally cleared, you decide it's time for a short break. Settling onto an overturned barrel safely upwind, you unwrap your loaf of bread, inspecting it cautiously for unwanted insect visitors. Medieval bread, frequently gritty with millstone debris, wasn't exactly luxurious fare, but tonight it tastes strangely satisfying, a small victory amidst your grim surroundings. Chewing thoughtfully, you reflect on medieval dietary customs. Nobles feasted extravagantly, tables groaning under roasted meats, spiced dishes, and sweet pastries. Commoners had simpler fare, coarse bread, thick stews, cheese that might double as armor in a pinch. Gong farmers, you occupied a uniquely challenging culinary niche. Simple, sturdy food that resisted spoilage from both time and environment. As you eat, your eyes wander the alleyway's shadows, noting the quiet presence of rats hungrily watching your meal. You toss them crumbs. Medieval sanitation workers often developed strange relationships with rodents, acknowledging their unfortunate camaraderie. Rats, after all, were persistent companions, uninvited, yet unavoidable dinner guests. Your flask of ale, though warm and slightly bitter, provides a comforting contrast to tonight's grimy duties. Medieval ale varied wildly in quality, but workers depended on it for hydration, as clean drinking water was notoriously unreliable. You sip slowly, savoring the bitter tang as lantern light flickers softly around you, casting shadows like medieval ghosts dancing silently nearby. Historically, medieval taverns and inns brewed their own ales, offering travelers everything from refreshing beverages to questionable concoctions capable of stripping paint. Your own flask tonight leans closer to paint stripper, but beggars and gong farmers rarely enjoyed the luxury of being choosy. Besides, it numbs your senses slightly, a valuable perk considering your next pit awaits nearby. Meal finished, you rise, brushing crumbs from your clothes. Pointless, perhaps, given tonight's tasks. Next up, the cesspit behind the town's busiest tavern, notorious for its rowdy patrons and questionable hygiene. Approaching cautiously, you find it predictably chaotic, overflowing pungent and crowded with angry flies. Medieval sanitation at its messiest. You sigh, descending once again into darkness. Lantern illuminating walls thick with slime. Shoveling steadily, you uncover expected items. Broken mugs, scraps of clothing, even a discarded shoe. Medieval revelers, it seems, regularly lost possessions in tavern latrines. A peculiar occupational hazard of drinking establishments. Suddenly, your shovel strikes something heavier, resisting your effort. Curious, you carefully unearth it, a small wooden chest still latched shut. Setting your lantern nearby, you cautiously pry open the warped lid, revealing, of all things, a handful of moldy biscuits, a tarnished silver spoon, and a few coins. Perhaps a traveler, hiding valuables, or a tavern prank gone wrong. Medieval humor, it appears, often had strange expressions. Pocketing the coins and spoon, because waste not, want not, you toss the biscuits to the eager rats waiting above. Medieval latrines, it seems, regularly rewarded your curiosity, offering odd treasures hidden amidst refuse. Historians might argue endlessly about motivations behind discarded items. You simply appreciated their quirky surprises. Emerging finally, you pause to stretch cramped muscles, breathing deeply of fresher air. Lantern glow reveals faint hints of dawn approaching, signaling tonight's shift nearly complete. You gather tools, satisfied with tonight's unexpected rewards. A few coins, a silver spoon, and stories enough to entertain fellow Gong farmers. Walking slowly home, you pass sleepy market stalls, preparing for the day, vendors nodding politely as you pass, respectful yet wary of lingering aromas. You nod in return, acknowledging the polite distance maintained. Medieval life depended heavily on sanitation workers, yet rarely welcomed them openly. A quiet paradox you've grown accustomed to. Arriving home, dawn fully illuminating rooftops, you carefully clean tonight's discoveries. Spoon polished, coins sorted, ready to join your growing collection of medieval oddities. Your meal break tonight was hardly luxurious, yet oddly satisfying. A small moment amidst difficult work, reinforcing your role in medieval life's quiet drama. As sleep approaches gently, you briefly consider tomorrow's meal. Another loaf, another flask, another night's hidden treasures. Medieval Gong farming, grimy yet intriguing, offered moments both mundane and mysterious. Perhaps historians overlook sanitation's quieter stories, but tonight reminded you how intimately medieval lives intertwined with your humble profession. Drifting into dreams, your thoughts dance gently around medieval meals, hidden treasures, and persistent rats, all quietly waiting beneath history's polished surface, eager for tomorrow night's discoveries. Medieval life, you've learned, is rife with stories. Some are noble tales of bravery, romance, or adventure. Others are curious anecdotes whispered in taverns. And then there are your own quiet legends, the strange and sometimes absurd rumors that swirl around Gong farmers. Tonight, as you begin your rounds, you overhear snippets of such whispers, townsfolk murmuring odd speculations, eyes sliding toward you with barely hidden curiosity as you head toward your first cesspit behind. The blacksmith's shop. You reflect briefly on the peculiar gossip that clings to your profession. Medieval people loved their urban myths, and Gong farmers were ideal subjects. Mysterious figures operating under cover of night, regularly handling society's messiest secrets. Naturally, imaginations ran wild. The blacksmith's pit is straightforward enough. Though you shovel carefully, rumors recently suggested a cursed sword hidden there. Medieval townsfolk often spoke of such enchanted weapons, blades said to bring misfortune upon their owners. Of course, you'd personally witnessed more medieval chamber pots than magical artifacts, but you remain cautiously hopeful. Your shovel hits something solid, and for a moment your heart quickens. Pulling it carefully from the muck reveals not a cursed sword, but an old blacksmith's hammer, rusted and forgotten. You chuckle softly, relieved, yet mildly disappointed. Medieval rumors rarely lived up to reality, but they certainly added interest to your nightly tasks. Moving onward, your next stop is the tailor's cesspit, a place surprisingly rich in urban legends. Recently, you'd heard townsfolk whispering that the tailor's shop secretly housed stolen royal garments. Apparently, someone claimed you'd once found an embroidered royal robe hidden beneath waste. Medieval gossip often elevated Gong farmers into accidental treasure hunters, a reputation you found amusingly exaggerated. Descending carefully, your lantern reveals no royal robes tonight, just piles of sodden fabric, scraps, needles, and thread. Medieval tailors, it seems, lost fewer treasures down latrines than local rumor suggested. Yet, you still pocket a few copper buttons, small consolation prizes for debunked myths. Historians continue debating how much medieval urban mythology accurately reflected reality. Some suggest legends of Gong farmers discovering valuable relics or hidden conspiracies were exaggerations, born from boredom or a fascination with the mysterious. Others argue these stories contained kernels of truth. After all, Gong farmers frequently stumbled upon oddities hidden beneath medieval towns. Tonight, you find yourself inclined toward skepticism. Next up is the bishop's latrine, recently rumored to contain evidence of scandalous indiscretions. Medieval clergy, despite their solemn vows, weren't immune from gossip and intrigue. Townsfolk insisted you'd discovered a bishop's wig there months ago, an amusing but dubious claim. Descending into darkness, you shovel methodically, expectations low. Yet suddenly, your shovel snags something soft, heavy, and distinctly wig-like. Lifting it carefully reveals sodden mass of horsehair, indeed resembling a bishop's wig. You stare blankly for a moment, uncertain whether to laugh or groan. Apparently, medieval rumors occasionally contained uncomfortable truths. Carefully placing the wig aside, you briefly contemplate implications. Did the bishop truly discard evidence of scandal? Or perhaps the wig's disposal was accidental, a bishop frustrated by itchy headgear, tossing it impulsively away. Medieval mysteries often had mundane explanations, but townsfolk loved juicy stories regardless. Emerging above ground, you move toward tonight's final stop, the brewer's pit. Gossip recently suggested you discovered secret recipes hidden there. Medieval ale brewers jealously guarding their formulas. occasionally discarding failed experiments down latrines. Approaching cautiously, you prepare for disappointment. But medieval sanitation work rarely left you entirely empty-handed. As you shovel carefully, your tool indeed strikes something glassy. A small, sealed bottle labeled cryptically, Old Monk's Secret. You chuckle softly. Perhaps tonight's urban myth holds some truth. Carefully pocketing the bottle, you consider tasting later. Medieval brewers' secret formulas sometimes involved questionable ingredients, better safe than poisoned. Finishing the pit, you stretch, dawn's soft glow creeping slowly over rooftops. Tonight's adventures confirmed some medieval myths, debunked others. Gong farmers quietly collecting evidence for historians' endless debates. Heading homeward, your satchel clinks softly, holding buttons, a bishop's wig, and a brewer's mystery bottle. Tangible proof of medieval gossip's strange accuracy. Passing market stalls, setting up for morning trade. Townsfolk nod cautiously, eyes flicking curiously toward your satchel, likely imagining treasures you might have discovered. Medieval life thrived on stories, fantastic or mundane, and Gong farmers offered plenty for imagination's fodder. Arriving home, you clean tonight's odd discoveries. The bishop's wig carefully washed and set aside, buttons sorted, brewer's bottle placed suspiciously upon your table. Briefly, you ponder tomorrow's gossip. What strange tales tonight's finds might spark? Medieval urban legends, you realize, depended heavily upon your quiet discoveries, your nightly toil fueling endless curiosity. Settling into sleep, you smile softly, amused by your unusual role in medieval storytelling. Gong farmers, unseen, unsung, yet essential, regularly inspired gossip, intrigue, even scholarly debates. Tonight confirmed something quietly satisfying. Medieval myths occasionally whispered uncomfortable truths. Tomorrow night awaits patiently, promising more hidden treasures beneath cobblestones. Stories quietly waiting, your shovel's curious prodding. For now, dreams gently swirl with medieval mysteries. Wigs and buttons, dancing softly beneath history's more glamorous tales. Tonight, your shift begins with the promise of something unusual. A summons to the castle courtyard, where anxious whispers and a crowd gathered hastily hint at drama unfolding. Lantern in hand, you approach cautiously, eyes adjusting slowly to the chaotic scene illuminated by flickering torches. At the courtyard's center stands an enormous stone privy, a medieval latrine designed impressively but impractically, towering with a grandeur better suited to cathedrals than sanitation. Surrounding it, bewildered nobles and servants chatter nervously, gesturing toward the structure, their faces tense and uncertain. A servant rushes over, his voice shaky. "There's something wrong," he whispers urgently. "An explosion. Down there." You blink slowly. Explosions weren't exactly common in medieval latrines, but when they did happen, the cause was usually simple. Methane gases building up beneath waste, ignited accidentally by an errant flame. Medieval architects, for all their cleverness, rarely anticipated such volatile chemistry beneath their carefully laid stones. You approach cautiously, lantern casting wary shadows across the structure. Thankfully, no flames remain visible, just an ominous smell and suspicious smoke curling gently upward from the shaft opening. You peer carefully downward, lantern illuminating stone walls blackened by soot, but thankfully intact. Historically speaking, medieval cesspit explosions, rare yet memorable, occurred due to trapped gases beneath waste-filled chambers. Methane, an invisible menace quietly produced by decomposing matter, occasionally ignited, causing sudden and terrifying eruptions beneath unsuspecting medieval feet. Tonight, apparently, medieval sanitation had chosen spectacular dramatics. You sigh softly, knowing precisely what's needed: investigation and clearing whatever debris remains. Carefully securing your rope, you lower yourself slowly, lantern held high, its glow revealing thick, lingering smoke and scattered fragments of stone, evidence of medieval engineering abruptly challenged by chemistry. Stepping gingerly, your boots crunch softly over debris. Nearby lies a shattered lantern, clearly the accidental ignition source. Medieval torchbearers, careless or merely unlucky, occasionally sparked disasters beneath latrines. Tonight's drama, it seems, owed more to clumsiness than malice. Shoveling gently, you clear scattered rubble, checking carefully for structural damage. Thankfully, medieval masons built sturdily. The explosion, though dramatic, caused limited harm. However, a faint noise nearby, soft coughing, catches your attention sharply. You turn quickly, lantern revealing something astonishing. A trembling young squire huddled nervously against the pit's far wall, covered head to toe in soot and grime. "Are you all right?" You whisper gently, startled yet concerned. He nods weakly, embarrassment clear beneath the dirt. I dropped the lantern," he admits shakily. "Didn't expect this." His voice quivers, ashamed and frightened. Medieval squires, ambitious yet inexperienced, often found themselves in humiliating predicaments, but exploding latrines surely set a new low. You help him rise carefully, offering reassurance. "Accidents happen," you murmur softly. "Next time, perhaps carry fewer flames into cesspits." He nods gratefully, shame easing slightly at your gentle humor. Emerging slowly, you steady him as nobles stare curiously, whispering speculation. The squire stammers an explanation, eliciting relieved laughter and gentle teasing. Medieval life, it seems, had room even for humorous forgiveness after sanitation mishaps. With drama resolved, your attention returns to cleanup, descending once again to clear debris thoroughly. Shoveling steadily, you reflect wryly, medieval Gong farmers truly handled unpredictable scenarios. Knights battled dragons. You faced methane explosions. Heroes perhaps came in varied forms. Historians still debate how common cesspit explosions truly were. Some dismiss accounts as exaggerated tales. Others acknowledge genuine hazards lurking beneath medieval latrines. Tonight confirmed vividly that medieval sanitation occasionally erupted spectacularly, a messy but memorable reminder of your profession's hidden dangers. Finally clearing debris, you emerge wearily, muscles protesting, but spirits lifted slightly by tonight's unusual Adventure, medieval sanitation, rarely offered explosions, thankfully, but occasional dramas kept your duties intriguingly unpredictable. Walking homeward, dawn gently illuminating cobblestones, townsfolk nod politely, cautious curiosity evident, likely aware of tonight's spectacle. Gong farmers, quietly respected, yet cautiously avoided, regularly found themselves central to medieval life's peculiar stories. Reaching your cottage, dawn now brighter, you clean soot carefully from clothes and tools, chuckling softly. Tonight's explosive incident would surely become town gossip, exaggerated in taverns, whispered in markets. Another peculiar medieval legend centered quietly around sanitation workers settling into sleep. Your dreams swirled gently with images, startled squires, explosive latrines, bemused nobles, all quietly reminding you how curiously interconnected medieval lives truly were. Sanitation, grim yet vital, regularly revealed dramas hidden beneath polished surfaces, quietly awaiting your shovel's careful attention. Tomorrow night promises new adventures, though hopefully less explosive. Medieval gong farming, you've discovered, regularly offered peculiar surprises beneath cobblestones. Tonight's incident confirmed vividly, beneath history's polished narratives, hidden dramas regularly erupted, sometimes literally in medieval latrines. Drifting finally into sleep, you smile softly, ready for whatever medieval sanitation throws your way next. Word count 1028. Tonight, as you set out once more, the streets seem quieter, softer somehow, as if even medieval towns occasionally held their breath, silently acknowledging your unseen contributions. Your destination tonight is familiar, yet humbling, the noble quarter, home to wealthy merchants and influential families. Here, grand houses line cobbled streets, elegant facades illuminated gently by lanterns, their refined residents tucked safely within, blissfully unaware or deliberately ignorant of your nightly labors. Passing silently, buckets in hand, you become acutely aware of medieval society's stark divisions. Nobles and wealthy merchants relied entirely upon your discreet work, yet rarely acknowledged your existence openly. Gong farmers, you've discovered, occupied a curious place, essential yet invisible, quietly ensuring medieval society remained hygienically possible. Arriving at your first noble house, a servant meets you at the gate, gesturing wordlessly toward the discreetly hidden latrine entrance. Medieval aristocrats preferred their sanitation carefully disguised. Latrines tucked behind gardens, artfully concealed beneath ivy-covered walls. They favored the illusion of pristine elegance, yet beneath their refined surfaces, human reality remained stubbornly messy. Descending slowly, your lantern reveals a carefully constructed stone shaft, walls meticulously smooth, medieval sanitation disguised elegantly. Here, even waste seemed privileged, better accommodated than in crowded communal latrines. Yet, despite wealth's comforts, your shovel's work remains fundamentally unchanged, quietly scooping, scraping, clearing away history's least glamorous reminders. Occasionally, Passing beneath windows, you overhear faint conversations drifting outward, snippets of noble gossip, quiet laughter, whispered intrigue. Medieval aristocrats led lives carefully curated, yet secretly complex. Scandals, alliances, hidden ambitions regularly unfolding behind polished doors. Gong farmers, like yourself, quietly witnessed glimpses, secrets whispered indirectly through waste casually discarded. Tonight, your shovel uncovers something small, yet intriguing. A delicate silver brooch, partially embedded within waste. Carefully lifting it, you inspect tiny engravings, a family crest, finely detailed, yet tarnished. How did such an item find itself discarded here? Medieval nobles rarely parted casually with valuables, unless deliberately hiding evidence or concealing misdeeds. Historians still debate whether medieval latrines regularly concealed scandals or merely accidental losses. Gong farmers quietly knew better. Medieval society, beneath its elegant facade, regularly discarded uncomfortable truths down latrines. Lost jewelry, evidence of betrayals, reminders of human flaws quietly hidden beneath refinement's polished veneer. Emerging finally, you pocket the brooch discreetly, nodding silently to servants waiting impatiently nearby. Medieval etiquette rarely included thanking sanitation workers, yet their respectful distance acknowledged your necessary role. Passing quietly onward, your mind wanders briefly. What quiet dramas tonight's brooch represented? What whispered secrets medieval nobles casually discarded beneath their refined surfaces? Next stop, the home of a prominent merchant, known for lavish feasts and extravagant parties. Unsurprisingly, his latrine tonight demands urgent attention. Overflowing evidence of medieval excess barely hidden behind ornamental gardens. Descending carefully, your lantern illuminates the shaft's chaotic interior. Fragments of pottery, broken wine glasses, even discarded scraps of fabric. Medieval revelry's inevitable aftermath. Shoveling methodically, your tool strikes something unusual. A heavy bronze goblet, engraved elaborately yet dented, clearly discarded hastily. Medieval parties, apparently, occasionally ended abruptly or violently. You pocket it thoughtfully. Another small puzzle piece within medieval society's complicated tapestry. Emerging above ground, servants eye you curiously, aware tonight's cleanup likely uncovered uncomfortable reminders of recent festivities. Medieval sanitation, quietly essential, regularly managed aftermaths, nobles preferred forgotten. Your discreet work allowed medieval society its illusions of perfection, though privately you smiled softly, knowing better. As dawn approaches, you briefly pause beneath the open sky, breathing deeply of fresher air. Lantern extinguished, you allow darkness's lingering shadows, gentle embrace, savoring solitude after tonight's quiet discoveries. Gong farmers regularly glimpsed medieval society's hidden complexities, evidence quietly discarded, secrets casually hidden beneath elegant surfaces. Walking homeward, townsfolk greet you cautiously, polite nods acknowledging your presence, yet careful to maintain respectful distance. Medieval sanitation workers, quietly essential, yet carefully avoided, regularly navigated delicate balances between visibility and discretion. Arriving home finally, dawn softly illuminating rooftops, you carefully clean tonight's discoveries. The silver brooch polished gently, bronze goblet thoughtfully inspected. Briefly, you ponder stories hidden within each. Medieval dramas, whispered indirectly, secrets carefully concealed, yet inevitably revealed beneath sanitation's careful scrutiny. Settling finally into sleep, your dreams swirl gently, silver brooches dancing quietly, bronze goblets whispering softly, medieval nobles quietly discarding uncomfortable truths beneath sanitation's careful management. Historians might debate endlessly, yet tonight confirmed clearly, medieval Gong farmers regularly uncovered quiet reminders of human reality hidden beneath society's elegant facade. Tomorrow night promises new adventures, more medieval secrets quietly awaiting discovery beneath polished surfaces. Gong farming, grim yet essential, regularly offered glimpses beneath medieval society's carefully maintained illusions, quietly reminding history of humanity's stubborn realities. Drifting finally into sleep, you smile softly, ready for tomorrow night's quiet dramas, secrets patiently awaiting your shovel's careful attention. Tonight feels different. An uneasy stillness hangs over the town as you begin your rounds. The distant toll of a church bell echoes solemnly, a quiet reminder that medieval life, vibrant and bustling by daylight, regularly faced darker realities, lurking just beyond lantern glow. And recently, rumors had begun whispering about something more sinister, spreading quietly through town streets. The dreaded Black Death had arrived. Historically, medieval plagues were devastatingly frequent, silent terrors slipping quietly through crowded streets, bringing panic and grief. Sanitation workers, unsurprisingly, felt their impact keenly, duties intensifying as disease spread rapidly through densely populated towns. Tonight, as whispers of plague circulate nervously, your job feels heavier, responsibilities quietly doubled, anxieties softly heightened. Your first stop tonight confirms growing fears, the communal cesspit near the crowded tenements overflowing, evidence of increased illness quietly undeniable. Descending carefully, your lantern reveals unsettling sights, medieval waste mixed grimly with discarded rags, stained cloths, signs townsfolk had begun quietly struggling with illness, perhaps trying desperately to hide symptoms. Shoveling steadily, your mind races quietly. Medieval towns faced limited options, confronting plague outbreaks, often resorting desperately to herbal remedies, prayers, isolation attempts, rarely effective. Gong farmers, quietly essential, found themselves managing sanitation amidst growing panic, unseen heroes navigating grim realities beneath medieval streets. Historians still debate precisely how medieval sanitation influenced plague outbreaks. Some argue limited effectiveness. Others note attempts at hygiene quietly delayed spread slightly. Regardless, tonight confirms vividly medieval sanitation workers confronted disease's harshest realities intimately, their nightly duties quietly heroic amidst rising fear. Emerging finally, your heart feels heavier. Medieval plagues, despite modern distance, retain haunting resonance. Townsfolk eye you anxiously, their faces tense, aware your work quietly indicates growing danger. You nod gently, reassurance difficult yet attempted. Medieval sanitation workers regularly served dual roles, essential hygiene managers quietly offering comforting steadiness amidst uncertainty. Next, you move toward the apothecary's cesspit, surely active tonight, medieval townsfolk seeking desperately for remedies offering comfort, cures hoped fervently, effective. Descending carefully, your lantern reveals precisely that. Scattered bottles, discarded vials, empty containers labeled, hopefully, plague remedy, healing elixir, cure all. Medieval desperation regularly embraced questionable medicines. Hope, after all, powerful amidst fear. Shoveling thoughtfully, you uncover something curious. A small, carefully wrapped parcel, hidden deliberately beneath waste. Opening it gently reveals an herbal mixture, labeled carefully in the apothecary's distinctive handwriting. Secret cure, highly potent. You smile softly, touched. Medieval apothecaries genuinely hoped remedies might offer solace amidst despair, their efforts quietly noble, despite uncertain effectiveness. Pocketing it carefully, perhaps useful someday, you continue onward, clearing the pit methodically, thoughtfully. Medieval sanitation, you've discovered, regularly revealed quiet glimpses into humanity's deepest hopes. Desperate remedies, secret cures, carefully hidden, evidence of quiet resilience amidst medieval despair. As dawn approaches softly, your last stop awaits. The monastery's latrine, monks undoubtedly facing rising anxieties beneath disciplined facades. Descending quietly, your lantern illuminates walls, etched gently with prayers. Monks, clearly desperate, silently beseeching divine intervention against medieval plague's quiet terror. Shoveling reverently, your tool reveals something poignant. Tiny fragments of parchment discarded, prayers hastily scribbled, yet discarded despairingly. Save us, mercy, end plague swiftly. Medieval monks, despite spiritual discipline, experienced quiet doubts, human fears, hidden carefully beneath cloistered lives. Gong farmers regularly uncovered quiet reminders. Beneath medieval discipline, monks were fundamentally human, frightened, hopeful, desperate, emerging finally, dawn gently touching horizon. You breathe deeply, medieval plague's quiet menace, undeniably present, yet tonight's discoveries, offering quiet hopefulness amidst despair. Gong farmers regularly confronted medieval realities intimately, human anxieties, desperate hopes, quiet resilience, revealed gently beneath grim sanitation duties. Walking slowly homeward, townsfolk nod anxiously, their faces quietly questioning, seeking reassurance, difficult yet necessary. Gong farmers regularly provided quiet stability amidst medieval uncertainty, their presence silently comforting despite difficult realities. Arriving home finally, dawn softly illuminating rooftops, you carefully clean tonight's discoveries. The herbal cure carefully stored, prayer fragments gently preserved, reminders of quiet medieval resilience amidst terrifying plague. Briefly, you ponder medieval humanity's quiet strength, fears acknowledged gently, hopes stubbornly clung to, despite despair's overwhelming presence. Settling finally into sleep, your dreams swirl gently. Herbal remedies quietly whispered, prayers softly murmured, medieval resilience gently asserting itself amidst overwhelming odds. Historians debate endlessly, yet tonight confirms quietly medieval sanitation regularly revealed humanity's quiet strengths beneath fear's shadowy presence. Tomorrow night promises new challenges, yet tonight's quiet discoveries reassure gently beneath medieval anxieties. Humanity's quiet resilience persisted stubbornly. Gong farmers quietly witnessing, supporting, silently reminding medieval society of hopeful possibilities amidst despair. Drifting finally into sleep, you smile gently, ready for tomorrow night's quiet dramas. Humanity's resilience softly revealed beneath medieval sanitation's grimy yet hopeful work. You wake with a start tonight, the kind that jerks your limbs before your mind is even aware of the room around you. Outside, a hard wind sweeps through the alleys like a warning, ruffling the shutters of your modest cottage. Something in the air feels off, too tense, too expectant. As you prepare your tools and lace your boots, a knock at the door comes earlier than expected. It's not a steward, nor a fellow Gong farmer. It's a soldier in partial armor, out of breath and clearly embarrassed. It's the Duke's nephew, he mutters, avoiding eye contact. He fell in. You pause, shovel halfway lifted, and blink. In what? You ask, though you already know. The soldier sighs. The latrine. Ah, so tonight will not be a normal night. He leads you back to the ducal estate with haste, dodging through alleys and past early revelers. Returning from taverns, you arrive at a courtyard more opulent than most markets, lined with statues, ivy-draped balconies, and noble silence, shattered by the muffled sounds of shouting from somewhere underground. You follow the trail to the ducal privy, an absurdly grand affair of carved stone, velvet-lined benches, and perfume-scented torches, because even medieval waste disposal could be draped in delusion, and below it, a narrow shaft winds down into the deep, dark unknown. He climbed up there to impress a girl, the soldier mumbles, shaking his head, lost his footing, landed square in the, well, you. They called you because who else would they call? Lantern in hand, rope secured, you lower yourself into the shaft. The smell hits you instantly, worse than usual. Panic adds a sour note to the air. And sure enough, there's the Duke's nephew, stuck halfway down the narrow passage, legs thrashing slightly, face pale, and eyes wide with humiliation. Don't say anything, he snaps the moment he sees you. Not a word. You don't. Not out of obedience, but because you're too busy trying not to laugh. Historically, stories of nobles getting themselves into ridiculous messes have survived the centuries for a reason. While scholars debate whether the king in the latrine tales are exaggerated or entirely fictional, your experience tonight suggests otherwise. Medieval arrogance, plus alcohol, plus architecture, a predictable formula for disaster. You coach him through breathing as you secure the rope under his arms. His ornate tunic is ruined, his boots unrecognizable, and his pride has suffered a loss that no amount of perfume can mask. "You'll keep this between us?" he asks, voice tight. You give a noncommittal shrug. "Depends how heavy you are." You hoist him out inch by inch, his limbs flailing like a poorly trained marionette. Eventually, you both emerge, and a gaggle of nobles gasp dramatically. Servants rush to clean him off with scented cloths, while he barks orders, desperate to reassert dignity. You stand quietly, watching. No one thanks you. That's fine. But as you turn to leave, the Duke's steward catches your arm. "You'll be compensated," he says, sliding a small pouch into your hand. You nod and walk off before anyone else can ask you to rescue another noble from their own bad decisions. Gong farmers weren't just sanitation workers. You were, on occasion, the last line of defense against noble idiocy. Medieval etiquette dictated that nobles maintain their poise at all times. But in private, when accidents happened, you were the one called in to clean not only the mess, but also the embarrassment. Walking home in the early dawn light, you open the pouch, silver, more than you'd earn in a month of routine cesspit cleaning. A generous thank you from a family desperate to keep tonight's episode from becoming the stuff of tavern ballads. You quietly pocket the coins. Historians still argue whether Gong farmers were feared, pitied, or quietly respected. After tonight, you're inclined to believe it was a little of all three. After all, who else would nobles trust to literally drag their reputations out of the muck? Back in your cottage, you peel off your gloves, rinse your boots in the corner basin, and collapse into your chair, letting the weight of the night ease from your shoulders. Tonight was absurd, embarrassing for someone else, but you handled it with your usual blend of patience, sarcasm, and a nose for danger. You fall asleep with a smile, knowing that somewhere in the ducal estate, a young noble is scrubbing his dignity with rose water and praying no one ever finds out what really happened. You, however, will never forget, and tomorrow night, when someone sneers as you pass or wrinkles their nose at your scent, you'll remember when the highest among them fell in the filth. It was you they called. Tonight, as you step into the streets once more, your pace is slower, thoughtful. The air carries a chill that's not just weather. It's the weight of many nights, many secrets, and the quiet burden of seeing medieval life from its lowest, truest angles. You've been mistaken for invisible more times than you can count, and that's exactly how most want it. No one wants to think about you, the person who hauls away the consequences of their fine feasts, their noble dramas, their drunken missteps. Yet without you, everything collapses. Literally, there's a particular alley you pass each night, between the butcher and the candlemaker. It's narrow, damp, and almost always empty. But tonight, you find a parchment nailed to a post, an announcement from the city council. You step closer, lantern flickering against curling parchment. A public debate is to be held in the town square. The topic? Should the city pay for organized sanitation services? You nearly laugh. Only nearly. Gong farming has existed for generations. Unofficial, uncelebrated, unpaid by the city. You and your peers are hired privately, discreetly, by those wealthy or desperate enough to admit they need you. And now, at long last, your work is being considered worthy of public recognition or rejection. You go about your rounds as usual, but the thought stays with you. At the castle, a chambermaid hurriedly tosses a bucket out a high window, narrowly missing you, and doesn't apologize. Behind the apothecary, a noblewoman in a velvet cloak wrinkles her nose as she steps around your buckets without acknowledgement. And near the tavern, a drunk patron mutters, "Better you than me," as you shovel something unspeakable into a pit. But in the shadows of a bakery, a small girl waves to you. No fear, no revulsion, just a curious smile and a thank you, whispered before she ducks back inside. You think of Edwin, your fellow Gong farmer, who's been doing this longer than anyone. His knees are giving out. His back is twisted like a staircase. And still he shows up every night because this job, lowly as it is, keeps the town running. He's the sort of man history forgets, but without whom the present wouldn't work. Later, as you take a rare break, leaning against a wall that doesn't smell entirely terrible, you reflect on the debate to come. It's not just about pay. It's about whether people like you will continue to be ghosts in this city's story or finally be written into its margins. Not with glory or grandeur, but with honesty. Historians still argue whether Gong farmers were part of the working class or some separate underclass altogether. Some records list you in city roles, others exclude you entirely, as though your work was too shameful to document. And yet, countless medieval cities could not have functioned without you. Latrines filled, pits overflowed, and plagues spread, all faster, without someone willing to step into the dark with a bucket and a shovel. Your job is not just waste removal, it is disease prevention. It is dignity preservation. It is, in its own grim way, an act of service. You make your way to the square, curious now, as the morning's light begins to pale the sky. A few early risers gather in hushed conversation, and you catch phrases drifting on the breeze. Undignified work, but it keeps us clean. Could pay them a pittance, at least. You step back into the alley shadows. You have no vote. You are not invited to speak. You are not meant to be here. But your presence, boots caked, shovel slung over shoulder, lantern still faintly glowing, says more than any speech. Eventually, people will forget this debate, or they'll record it in some ledger, tucked away between tax reports and grain inventories. Perhaps the vote will pass. Perhaps it won't. But you'll keep coming each night, with or without applause. Because when it rains hard, and the streets flood, and the stench rises, they'll remember you again. And when they do, it'll be with quiet urgency, not with celebration, not with poetry or song, but with a knock at your door and a whispered, "We need your help." You finish your shift beneath a sky painted with the softest oranges and blues, your final bucket emptied, your lantern flickering out. The town continues its breathless sleep, unaware of the filth that's been quietly erased before the first rooster crow. Back at your door, Edwin sits on your stoop. He's brought 2 wooden cups and a shared bottle of thin, bitter ale. You sit beside him, neither of you speaking much, just watching the sky change, listening to the town wake behind closed shutters. "You hear about the council meeting?" he asks finally. You nod. Think they'll do it? You shrug. Does it matter? He thinks for a moment. Maybe not, but I'd like to be remembered, even if it's just a line in some dusty book someday. You raise your cup to him and he clinks it softly. To the forgotten, and in the gentle silence that follows, you both drink. The night begins with a gentle drizzle, the kind that slicks the cobblestones and turns every step into a cautious negotiation between balance and gravity. The rain brings with it a strange calm. The streets are emptier than usual, the air cleaner, relatively, and your thoughts heavier. There's something meditative about the repetition of your work. Lift, scoop, pour. The rhythm is steady, familiar, and almost soothing in its own disgusting way. You begin at the usual routes, behind the bakery, down the slope near the old stable, past the tanner's workshop, where the smell could almost rival your own wares. Each pit, each alley, holds memories now. You've been doing this for years. This is your city, not the city of tapestries or trumpets, not the one sung about in minstrels' halls. Yours is the version made of gutters and thresholds, of sewer grates and sagging wooden lids. Tonight, though, the city feels different, not just because of the drizzle or the memory of the council debate still echoing in your mind. It's something else, something slower, like the city itself is holding its breath. At one of your final stops, the tannery's latrine, you notice a small cluster of boys huddled nearby, watching you. Not with mockery, not even quite with curiosity, just silent observation. You glance at them once, then go about your task. They whisper among themselves. Then one of them, barefoot, maybe 8 or 9 years old, takes a tentative step forward. Is it true, he says softly, that you found a knight's sword in a pit once? You pause, shovel mid-swing, and turn slowly. Where'd you hear that? My brother said so. Said you pulled it out like it was stuck in a stone. You consider for a long beat, then tilt your head. No sword, you say. But I once found a duke's toupee. The boy blinks. What's a toupee? You grin. A very hairy secret. They laugh. All 3 of them. The sound echoing down the alley, like something lighter than the air. You nod at them, and they vanish into the shadows, giggling as they go. That's the thing about being invisible. You hear more. You see more. You become the hidden spine of the story. Everyone else thinks they're writing. You work your way to the edge of town, where the cesspit lies. Rain slicks your gloves as you lift the final bucket and pour it over. The sound it makes, one last heavy splash, isn't just relief. It's punctuation. Another night, another page turned in the city's strange and fragrant book. As you gather your tools, a soft wind blows through the trees. The rain eases. The clouds begin to break. You stand for a moment longer at the edge of the city, looking back. Here's the truth no one ever tells. Without you, this place collapses, not in a dramatic, flaming ruin. No, it collapses quietly, rot creeping beneath the floorboards, disease pooling in basements, secrets piling in corners until they grow legs and start whispering. And so, you carry the waste. You carry the burden. You carry the city. And tomorrow night, you'll do it all again. Now, the rain has stopped. The buckets are empty. The city sleeps. You've returned home, your gloves hung to dry, your boots by the door. The fire is low, crackling just enough to remind you it's still breathing. Your muscles are tired, not in pain, just content from work well done. The kind of ache that invites rest, not complaint. Outside, a rooster hasn't yet dared to crow. The streets are still slick, the sky still dark, but inside, it's warm. The smell of wet leather fades. All that remains is stillness. You lie back on your cot, the wooden frame creaking familiarly beneath you. Your eyelids are heavy, like thick curtains pulled by invisible hands. You hear only the soft drip of rain from the eaves and the distant lull of wind brushing across the thatched roofs. Breathe in. There's nothing left to do. Breathe out. You've done your part. You've cleaned what others left behind. You've shouldered the weight they never see. And tomorrow, when they rise and step into their streets and halls, they won't notice the difference. But you'll know you were there. You made it better. Now rest. Let the quiet carry you. Let the dreams find you. Let the city sleep because you are finally allowed to.